What about the people who follow the satanic belief system? Are they devil worshippers? Or do they actually just have a different philosophy on life? The Church of Satan was founded by this guy, Anton Sander LaVey, back in San Francisco, 1966. That cat right there with is that a burger? No, that's a skull. He was the head of the Church of Satan for 30 years until his death in 1997. And now the church operates out of New York in Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, obvious. And the high priest is Peter Gilmore. So, Peter, let's break it right down. Some of the myths of the Church of Satan. You don't actually believe in Satan, do you?
Right. We're not devil worshippers. We're Satanists. We start off being atheists and then decide that we are our own gods, the center of the universe. And so Satan for us is a symbol of freedom, liberty, and pride, which we think is a wonderful thing.
Well, now why Satan? I mean, you could have been inspired by Dylan. You could have been inspired by Shakespeare. And you would have had way less hassle. Why did somebody go, you know that guy that everybody hates in the Bible? That's the guy. Why him?
Well, Satan trumps all of those folks, first of all, and we're certainly good showbiz folk, as all people in religions are, although we're the only ones who admit it. And Satan in Hebrew means adversary, and we are the adversaries for all of those spiritual religions that tell people to wait for some afterlife and waste their current lives. We don't think that you live after death, so you've got to enjoy yourself now.
Well, and as bizarre as many religions would seem to an outsider, you recognize that religion does provide meaning to people's lives. Certain people take a lot of meaning from it. What does the Church of Satan provide people in the form of meaning?
Well, for us, meaning is something that you have to give existence because we think the universe is indifferent to us. There's no God, there's no devil, there's no afterlife. So you have to take control of your own life and decide what is going to have meaning for you. So Satanism is a tool for our members to get the most out of life.
What are the rituals of the Church of Satan? What do you guys do? Do you meet every Sunday? What's your deal?
Well, ritual is a tool, and we are not required to use it. We consider it a self-transformative psychodrama. It's a way of going into a theatrical space where you release any emotions that are hindering you from enjoying your life. So if somebody's done you something wrong, they've gone out of their way to harm you, you go into the ritual chamber and you put a curse on them. You take a doll of them, you stick pins in it, you scream and shout and your system. Then you leave it there. You don't take it with you once you've gotten out of the chamber. And that way you feel a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, but do you actually, like, you're sticking pins in people's dolls, imagining they're people. Do you expect that somebody out there is going to go, Jesus, my back really hurts all of a sudden?
No, we don't expect that. But if something bad happens to them after that, we're not going to feel sorry for them because they're the ones who harmed us in the first place.
Well, I guess obviously you always hear the negative press that comes to the Church of Satan. Anytime there's some sort of ritualistic killing out there, your church steps up and disavows yourself from those groups. Do you have any relationship with those people who call themselves Satanists and do these things that you don't agree with?
Well, actually, the FBI has proved that there really are no organized groups doing any of those ritualized killings. That's a big misnomer that was fostered by Christian evangelists during what we call the Satanic Panic. Every once in a while, you'll find somebody crazy who is a Christian. They believe in the Christian God and the Christian devil, and they believe that their devil symbol is evil, and they might use that to try to put something negative on someone they hurt. But that's something that's actually far rarer than you might expect. It just gets a lot of attention.
And how does somebody become the high priest? How do you become the Black Pope? Like we all saw when Pope John Paul II passed away and the whole process to bring us Benny XVI, we saw the black smoke and the drama. What happens when you become the Black Pope of the Church of Satan?
Well, in the Church of Satan, it's merit, not inherit. So I spent a long time working as an administrator of the organization, being on the Council of Nine, which is the board of directors for the whole thing. And I was a close friend and confidant of Anton LaVey. So when he perished, he basically had set up his companion, who was our high priestess Blanche Barton, myself and my wife Peggy Nadramia to be the main administrators of the organization. And it became magically appropriate for me to take the reins and be the high priest.
You know, I grew up as a fan listening to blues music and listening to rock and roll and metal, and you always heard Satan attached to all three of those. And you always hear about them in the context of high-profile members. Marilyn Manson apparently was a card-carrying member of your church. Have you got a lot of other high-profile people who are a member of your church?
Certainly, of course. We have ones that will tell you who they are, and, King Diamond, of course, and Sammy Davis Jr. was a member, as was Jane Mansfield. And then we have high-profile members who will never let you know because it would harm their careers. And in Satanism, since Satanism is a tool, not a cause, we don't require people to be open about their membership, so that the folks who are in the PTA, who are running corporations, who are working in law enforcement, and in the military, we have plenty of people over in Iraq, that they won't get hindered in their careers by the Christians who would be with them, who would be prejudiced against them.
Well, you've seen all the good work that Tom Cruise has done for the Church of Scientology. Don't you think you need one of those for you guys?
We're fine. If Tom Cruise ever decided he wanted to be part of us, he's a good producer and actor. We'd think that was great. But we're doing okay. I'm kidding here, but you're the Black Pope, and I wonder if at a certain point, if when the actual Pope comes to town, you guys meet like a First Ministers Conference, like heads of religions. You don't have any of that stuff? No, we're not ecumenical. We really don't care what other people believe. So long as other religions keep to themselves, people can believe whatever they want, whatever floats their boat. So long as they're not trying to force it on us or trying to legislate their morality, we really don't care. We're not trying to proselytize or convert anybody, because we think you're a born Satanist, that you find our literature, you recognize yourself in it as if it was a mirror, and you go, hey, I didn't know it, but I've always been a Satanist. It's not something that you convert to.
So you're not putting backwards messages on CDs or MP3s now to get to the kids, are you?
No, we don't let people who are under the legal age of adulthood join, and we prefer mature folks who have made a real good decision about who they are and wanting to throw in their lot with us.
We appreciate you taking the time on the day that is 666. Any big plans for tonight? Anything you got in the works? Fireworks or something?
Yes, well, not fireworks, but we're performing a satanic high mass in Los Angeles at the Steve Allen Theater. The Center for Inquiry, which is a skeptical society, realized that we Satanists are also skeptics. We're materialists and Epicureans. So we're going to have a high mass where there are Satanists gathering from about 9 different countries around the globe to have the first public satanic ritual.
Peter Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan, the Black Pope, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today is Halloween, and that is the holy day for modern-day witches and Satanists. Whenever you hear about witches or Satanists these days, the memory flashes back to those old horror movies when Hollywood filled the screens with evil characters who wore black capes, false fangs, and carried out magic spells against innocent victims. It was often so camp that a lot of people today just dismiss the stories about modern-day Satanists and witches as harmless fantasy. But, in fact, it is reported that satanic murders are on the rise. Just last April in Mexico, police were horrified to discover an iron cauldron containing dried blood, a roasted turtle, and a human brain. As the brutal story unfolded, the police dug up the remains of 15 human sacrifices, each killed in the name of Satan. Zena LaVey is a Satanist who was baptized into the Church of Satan by her father, Anton LaVey. He founded the Church of Satan back in 1966. Zena says there is no truth to the news reports of satanic sacrifices, and she says Satanists are just getting a bad rap. Nicholas Schreck is also a Satanist who is the founder of a separate sect called Werewolf Order. He wants to unleash the beast in man. Johanna Michelson is a Christian who is outraged by our guest. She wants to warn parents that Zena LaVey and Nicholas Schreck are interested in recruiting young children into their occult religions. We're going to start with Zena. How old were you when you were baptized into the Church of Satan? This was your father who had the church, right?
My father founded the Church of Satan in 1966, and I was the first legal satanic baptism in history. And I was about 3.5 years old. I remember it vividly. Now, what a satanic baptism is it's somewhat different from the Christian baptism of cleansing the child of the original sin. We don't believe there is an original sin, and we don't see what the child needs to be cleansed of in the first place. We think that all of the things that made the child come to be are natural and true and should be celebrated and honored. So meaning all of the romantic nights or whatever that made the child come to be a living entity should be something celebrated. So my baptism was something more of a glorification of life, a glorification and an appreciation for this new life. And it was, from what I remember, it was an ecstatic experience because all the attention was focused on me, and as a lot of children like that, it is something that we feel is important to say that children and babies should be held in the most sacred regard because we feel that they're the most natural and true magicians.
I think it just disturbs people that the word baptism is, which after all is a Christian word, John the Baptist, is taken to celebrate the lust. And I think that, from what I've read, that's what it's supposed to be, to celebrate the lust. You've had a child?
Yes,
when you were 14, and the child was also baptized the same way.
And that's another thing that somewhat outrages me about all of these allegations that Satanists are child molesters or animal sacrificers. I find it in some ways amusing, but I also find it sort of sickening that we are falling under these accusations, because in my father's book, The Satanic Bible, it clearly states our feelings about children and animals, that we hold them in the highest regard. I have 4 cats, they're all living, and witches have always aligned themselves with animals. They don't destroy them.
You're a witch.
I am a satanic witch, right. I also want to say that Satanism has nothing to do with Wicca, nothing to do with white witchcraft, nothing to do with Santeria, nothing to do with voodoo, nothing to do with a lot of all these other things that are lumped into all the same category, like you were referring to the Matamoros murders earlier. Those were a form of voodoo mixed with some other things, and if you really explore it, you'll find that it's much more akin to a Christian cult than a satanic cult. And the very idea that they were sacrificing things to their god
is more Christian?
Is more Christian, because we don't sacrifice things to a god. We don't sacrifice things at all. Why should there be a sacrifice?
Well, let's go through some of the things that obviously would upset people. You worship. Now, if I'm wrong,
that's another. Yeah, that's another.
I'm going to say you worship the 7 deadly sins.
Well, that's. I'd say you're half right. We don't worship an anthropomorphic deity. We don't worship Satan as a deity, as an outside source. We use the word Satan in the semantic representative sense of meaning the adversary, or the opposed, or the one to question.
All right, if you're following in Christianity the Golden Rule, you are following the 7 deadly, what people consider the 7 deadly sins?
Right. Well, what we say is what Christianity has done has taken everything that would be a natural process, natural to humans and animals, and set them up as sins. For example, I like to say, if you look at the 7 deadly sins, there are things like greed, lust, envy, anger even.
But we think those are bad things.
And why should greed or envy be bad? If you admire someone for something they have, if someone says, "Oh, Sally, you're so lucky, you know, you have this wonderful show," well, don't you think that might inspire them to try to do something that would be as fulfilling in their life as what is in yours? So that would incorporate...
So greed is all right.
Envy.
Envy's all right. What are the other 7 deadly sins? Avarice?
Right. All of these things, we say,
lust. These
are things that are natural human functions. And there should be nothing, there is no sin to them.
All right. One of the other things that disturbs people, when you want to wish someone ill, you're saying you don't sacrifice them, but don't you put in your head a thought to wish them evil, wish them evil, wish them evil?
You mean like throwing a curse or doing a destruction ritual?
Yeah.
Well, we feel that the only purpose in doing that is if you are attacked initially. If you are attacked on some level, then we retaliate. We don't...
But how do you retaliate is what disturbs people, I guess.
Well, see, our philosophy is not one of turn the other cheek. We believe in vengeance. If you keep turning the other cheek, you run out of cheeks. And we feel that if you're attacked, the way you retaliate, I'll take the most simplest example of if you're in a work situation, you absolutely hate your boss. Your boss is an awful person that never gives you credit for what you do, is constantly browbeating you. You come home, maybe you take it out on your husband or your dog or your kids or whatever. We don't think that that's the way things should be done. We believe that you direct your anger and your vengeance towards that which has gained it. And so
what would I do?
So when we do a destruction ritual, it is for the first of all, it's for the purpose of eliminating these pent-up hostilities that you've bottled up inside of yourself. Right. And the effect after you've done that is that everything relates to you differently, in a different way. So a destruction ritual can serve 2 purposes of being like a catharsis or a psychodrama or a form of therapy even. Some psychiatrists have even used the Satanic Bible's destruction ritual as a form of therapy.
So it makes me feel good if I put a whole lot of stuff in a cauldron and do a little...
Or whatever, any type of imagery.
Of just getting out your pent-up anger at your boss.
And then the effect that is created after that is that people will relate to you then in a different way.
They certainly will, Sally. They'll relate to you in a really terrific way. You know, there are an awful lot of therapists, I agree with you, who are using this kind of nonsense to make people feel... You know, Christians don't agree that if you're angry with your boss, you should go home and kick your dog either. But a lot of therapists are also coming out with facts that hostility and the breeding of hostility creates it. It doesn't dissipate it.
Oh, we don't breed hostility.
Really?
No,
I tend to disagree with that because when you talk
Sally.
about, if I may finish my sentence, that the only time a Satanist performs a human sacrifice is twofold purpose, to release the magician's wrath in throwing a curse, and to dispose of a totally obnoxious and deserving individual. And then you've got some of the curses here. I've taken a great deal of sticking pins and needles into a doll representing your victim, shredding them, and then the point is made that if the curse takes place and the victim actually dies, rejoice in that because you've served the world by ridding them of an obnoxious individual.
Satanism represents an opposition to hypocrisy. Every human being feels rage. Every human being feels anger. And we feel it is natural to express that anger in a healthy way.
You know what? Let me
wait. Let me explain or try to see if I can make some order here. You, both of you, say Christianity is full of hypocrisy. That
it is a restraining force on the natural order
and it's hypocritical, and what you want to do is overcome that.
We don't believe there's anything wrong with the human being to begin with. We celebrate our life, our vitality. We celebrate life.
All of the natural instincts.
And Johanna is saying, wait a minute, a lot of this is very evil and very negative.
Because Christianity is based on the idea of the original sin.
And let us all keep in mind that she is a Christian, so you have to take that into account.
What I want to do now is take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll ask you, first we understood what she's talking about, I think, a little. And we'll talk to you about the whole idea of unleashing the beast in a man. And of course, anytime you want, just jump in. And you'll explain to us why you think Christian. All right. We'll be right back. By the way, this is a holy day for some of our guests.
I think semantically we should say it's an unholy day for some of your guests.
An unholy day. Nicholas, what is the Werewolf Order? You represent the Werewolf Order.
Yes,
what is it?
I founded the Werewolf Order in 1984 as a vanguard for the coming satanic century because we have been defined by Christians and our enemies for too long. Now Satanists are coming out of the underground to reveal what Satanism is in the media. We're putting out our own music, satanic music, truly satanic music, not this heavy metal crap that we've had saddled onto us. We don't like that sort of music at all. Satanic music would be in the tradition of composers like Richard Wagner, Rachmaninoff. The great classical composers were completely anti-Christian. The Ring cycle of Richard Wagner was a complete opposition to the Christian hypocrisy. And what the Werewolf Order represents essentially is returning to the Western European tradition that predated Christianity. We believe Christianity is an alien creed to the Western European and American mind.
When you say werewolf, I get a picture of a man's body and a head with the thing.
The werewolf represents an archetype of the beast unleashed in man.
What are you saying?
We are saying that we want to bring out the animal in man. We are animals, and we are proud of our animal heritage.
And Sally, let me tell you what this animal heritage says.
Throughout history, werewolves, vampires, witches, warlocks, people who have been accused of being these mythological creatures have been burnt at the stake by women like this.
Oh no, not
now.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh,
yes.
no.
The Spanish Inquisition.
That had nothing to do with biblical Christianity. But let me tell you what they're talking about. Let me tell you the kind of honesty they advocate. Let me finish my sentence.
Talking about because
the kind of honesty they advocate, Sally, is the kind of honesty that held a ritual August 8, 1988, in a theater in San Francisco, in which a movie was shown of the Tate LaBianca murders, and 200 people who attended this cheered and applauded as she was sliced open and her baby was taken out. And then, Zena, you and I believe about 5 others stood there with kettle drums beating, reading from the Satanic Bible, blasphemy such as calling Jesus an artisan of hoaxes, bandages of homages,
that's not the part I
an
read.
imposter, not the kind of thing.
Well, no,
I wasn't there by God's grace. But people who celebrate the Manson murders, who think like you do
Celebrate
that,
the Manson
oh
murders?
yes, absolutely,
Well,
and who
what-
think as he does that Hitler was one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century.
What she's-
This is the
what
kind of
she's
honesty
doing-
they want you to buy.
Let's start with, were you celebrating the Manson murders? Point
What
by
we
point.
were celebrating on.
No, I asked her. Were you celebrating the Manson?
She's reduced it to the most simplistic level.
Oh,
yes.
what was really happening?
What was really happening was this was definitely a satanic rally, probably one of the first, and there will be many more. And what in the 60s, what we represented was the last bastion of order, when everybody was of the sort of hippie thought, free love, free everything. We didn't believe in all of that. We were the last bastion of true order.
You know
in
what the order
60s.
calls for, Sally? When in an interview, Mr. Schreck said to the interviewer, and it's on videotape, words to the effect that their goal, his goal, is the annihilation of the total Judeo-Christian population of the
Absolutely.
world.
Well, that's
Of course.
happening
and
as
that's
we
going to
speak.
bring
And
order
what we
to
are
the world,
seeing now,
mind you.
the Judeo-Christian system has turned the human race into hypocrites, weaklings, and as Friedrich Nietzsche said in 1888, it is a religion for slaves. What we are preaching
Is the religion of Hitler.
Is a religion of masters.
Hitler, will you answer her? Are you?
He's a neo-Nazi, yes.
Are you a Nazi?
Absolutely not. National Socialism was a tradition that was only associated with the period 1933 to 1945. However,
But the ideas of Hitler, do you espouse those?
However, I would
Yes,
say
he had a
this.
neo-Nazi flag. He was
In the
filmed,
sense-
Sally, saying that a bloodbath would be cleansing,
Absolutely,
a
of
purification
course,
of the
and I
planet.
would-
Who's bloodbath? People like myself, people like you who don't agree
No,
with
what
their
I
glorious
we've
freedom.
let me answer her now. What I am saying is that the human race has overpopulated the world, and the Judeo-Christian tradition has succored weakness. It has succored people who should not be helped. And what we believe is that we should
Like
let the
the infirm,
natural,
like the children
what
who
we
are
should
weak
let
and
the natural,
handicapped.
what we should let happen is that the natural processes of nature should take care of these things.
Okay, let's be that's very
No,
much
if you look
Hitlerism.
at the, but
in
if you look at
terms
the
of-
animal kingdom,
No, it is
Totally
no, it
so.
is
If you look at-
Satanism, and there's quite a difference there.
No, he
We are not-
advocated the
the
same
animal
principles.
kingdom, there's plenty of law and order in the animal kingdom. Somehow, nature takes care of itself.
But let me get
Now,
into
what-
the-
Like with
let
the
me get
earthquake in San
higher-
Francisco.
Nicholas,
Yes.
be very specific. Hitler
All right,
wanted the survival.
Let's look at the 20th century, including Adolf Hitler and the rise of the Third
no,
Reich.
no, don't get philosophical. Reduce
What
it
that
to...
represented was a violent resistance to the Judeo-Christian order.
To the tune of 6 million Jews murdered, Sally.
Well, what about Russia? They
And what
followed
about,
that?
and let's speak about the millions of people. This interesting double standard
Let me ask
comes
you.
up. Christians always talk about all the people that we are responsible for murdering, which I have seen no evidence or proof of. However, if we look
Okay,
at this
well, let
book,
me-
Now,
if we
wait a
look at this
second.
book, the Holy Bible, this has been the recipe for mass murder for 2,000 years.
That is a
Yeah, but
lie.
I'm having trouble
people
with
have
you,
died being
Nicholas,
burnt at
that
the
is a
stake.
lie.
Let me
It is not a
address-
lie. Let's
that is
talk
a
about
bald-faced lie.
Let's talk about the Christian heritage, which has tortured women and children for years.
No, that
in
is
the
not
name,
the Christian
saying
heritage.
that they
That
were
is the
heretics.
heritage. No, that is the heritage of a church who took its own traditions over and above the revealed Word of God. That is not the tradition of
Well,
Christianity.
that's
Nicholas,
their
Nicholas, let
interpretation.
me
Christians are horrified by
get
that.
The
specific with you.
Of course.
Those parts of Hitler's ideology that you agree with. Number one, is it correct that if somebody, what are you saying when you're saying better breeding? Weakness or illness or people like that should not be saved?
I'm
Be
returning-
very specific with
Yes, I'm returning to the ancient tradition of eugenics, which means that we should have a stronger humanity. What Judeo-Christianity
But
has
how do you
done,
expect to
we
do
let
it?
nature. We do not have welfare.
No welfare.
We eliminate
Now we're getting
government
All the
aid.
poor get to die off.
Yes,
We
exactly.
tax the churches as well.
We
Yes,
This is
we
another
believe
thing that
The poor
Church of
die
Satan-
off, no welfare.
It's sink or swim.
No,
We-
if someone is ill,
If someone is ill, they get the proper medical care. However,
if they can contribute to their society, otherwise you let them die because they're standing in the way.
If they are valuable members of society, now let's return to the werewolf.
But who decides who is a valuable member of society?
We allow nature to decide. What Judeo-Christianity is an unnatural mental disease that is a reaction to nature. We are proud of our pagan and natural heritage. We do not wish to control humanity, but to release their most noble and beautiful aspect.
Like the ritual we described. This they call noble. Listen, Sally, you need to understand something. When they talk about noble and beautiful, you need to understand that they mention, even in their own books, that on the altar of Satanism, up is down, left is right, good is evil, insanity is sanity. You need to understand the terminology. No, by your own. I'm quoting you, not me.
No,
you're saying that the Manson murders are the highest epitome of selective...
She's simply putting words into our mouth.
I'm quoting your material.
She's not wrong when she says that I can't imagine a bunch of people getting together in a church and watching the Manson murders. Now, tell me what we were doing.
What this was a ritual to celebrate the end of the 60s, the end of the ideas of free... Let me explain.
Why not use the hula hoop?
Because the Manson murders...
We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, Boyd, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the church and what we saw this evening?
Okay, I'm a member of the Church of Satan, and I'm a musician. I've written a few books, and what we did this evening was a ritual. Anton was saying the other night, he's saying Satanism is coming out of the ritual chamber and into the mainstream, and I think that's what we're doing, trying to bring that message to a broader audience.
Give me some examples of how it's coming into the mainstream now, Satanism.
Well, me and a lot of the people I know are spreading the word, and Adam has Feral House Press, and he's published some books, and I put out records. In
San Francisco, how many members do you have in your church?
I'd have no idea. But we're an elitist organization. We prefer quality rather than quantity. We don't care. We don't want to have big buildings and attract a mass audience. We want an elite, just a few people who are good people who will be able to do what we need to have done.
And what other things you need to have done?
Well, we need to bring about stratification. We need to bring power back to the powerful. We need the slaves to be enslaved again and not be slaving over us, not be ruling over us and dictating the content of our lives. We want to dictate the contents of our lives. We think strength is better than weakness, and we want to live our life in that way.
Describe a little bit about the difference, if you will, between the Church of Satan and some of the crazies that are out there doing things in the name of Satan. How does that make you people feel?
Well, I think the Church of Satan is creating real changes. We have people behind the scenes. We have people in high places who are making changes that people aren't even aware of. And these nitwits that just go out and kill people in the name of Satan are serving a purpose in that they're thinning down the population, but they aren't really the kind of Satanists that like us. They aren't the sort of people we associate with and the sort of people we respect or look up to.
Is this resurgence in Satan just happening in San Francisco, or is it happening all?
It's happening all over the world, and it's coming about in a lot of different ways. Some people can call it Satanism, but this force that's happening in the world is coming about all over. It's like resurgent atavism, and some people call it Satanism, some people call it by other names, but it's happening all over, and it will happen more and more.
Is there an Armageddon coming? I mean, is there a date that you're aiming for?
No. No, I think Armageddon came a long time ago. The end of the world came ages ago, but it happened slowly over a period of time and nobody noticed it. It's an ongoing process. The world today is different than the world 30 years ago. It's like decayed so much, and it's decaying more and more all the time. And as that decay gets worse, we get stronger. And we are rising up as the entire world is sinking down. The entire world is rotten and corrupt, and they're ordaining their own death. To us, they're just dead people who refuse to lay down. They're cadavers.
There is an obvious similarity between you and your ceremonial and what was in Germany in the 1930s or 1940s. Can you talk a little about that? I mean, what is it in the Nazi, the SS, that appeals to you?
Well, for us specifically, it's what appeals to us about the SS or the Nazis, and what we feel we have in common with it is order. Bringing things back to order, recognizing a natural order in the world that things have to operate according to. If you work with nature and work in its will, you're all powerful. But if you work against its will, it'll step on you, and you'll never get anything accomplished. And to us, this isn't official Church of Satan doctrine, but me personally, Hitler was he was an occultist, trying to bring about a pagan revival. It was completely against the whole Judeo-Christian ethic, and he was bringing that to an end and bringing something new forward. And I feel that's what we're doing today. This is like the start of a renewal process. It's a purification. And it's a natural process. We don't have to do it. We're doing it. We're helping it along, but it's something that's a natural process that would come about on its own, and it is. And the stratification is coming about. The people who are there are rising up and coming into line with us, and the others are just floundering.
If you could both start off and give me a background on Radio Werewolf. Let's start there.
Well, Radio Werewolf was founded in 1984 as the manifestation of a certain quality in not the human experience, but what has been understood as the human experience. It's a quality that people are frightened of, a quality that people consider evil, and it's something that has been very little understood until now. And in 1984, we consider that the lycanthropic revolution began, and since that date, we have summoned up the dark forces in man. We're summoning up the wolf in man, and we're calling on everything that has been forbidden, everything that has been locked up and restrained, and our work is designed to unleash the beast in man once and for all.
What's the final objective though once you unleash the beast in man?
Well, we don't have a linear objective that we could explain to you in a way that you could simply understand, but certainly our quest is for world domination. In the simplest terms, our quest is for power for its own sake, power used to the extreme as it has never been used before.
We both individually had this quest, and then we bonded together and the power increased. And we find the more people that become involved, the power increases, and it gets to be a larger and larger phenomena. As you saw tonight, there are masses of people who are being drawn to this. For the first time, they're coming out of the closet. They've always been around. It's always been the same small percentage. But they're coming out of the closet now, and they're exposing themselves, and they've always been more powerful than the immortal.
We separate the human race into two species, predator and prey. And that is why we've chosen the wolf imagery as our standard and our symbol. And the rest of humanity is really of very little concern to us. Our main purpose is to create an elite, a power base of masters who will finally remove the excrement of Christianity, Judaism, Mohammedanism, all of the traditional slave religions, as Nietzsche called them, and we mean to destroy them by any possible means. This is the first phase in a revolution that will continue into the 21st century. It's, by some people's standards, a demonic revolution, but it is the liberation of the finest things in man: beauty, strength, wisdom, and everything that has been perhaps condemned as the black arts, as evil.
When you say by any possible means, what exactly do you mean by that?
Our music is designed to awaken primordial instincts in the human mind. And whatever comes of this is our desire. When we perform music, it's a ritual. It's a very specific ceremony designed to unleash these emotions.
We incorporate the dominant frequency. That's a frequency that human beings respond to. It's an ancient frequency that's always been around. Everything breaks down into vibrations, and by controlling that, you can control both matter and thought. And we've investigated this, and we've spent a lot of time, and our music incorporates the dominant frequency in our control of the masses. The masses are only to be controlled. It's either the control they're under now or the one that we bring.
And we're living in a dead world at this moment. The world ended a long time ago. Those who fear that the world is going to end are very mistaken, because when we look around us on the streets of our rotting metropolises, we see automatons. These people are zombies. They have no spirit, they have no will, and the time has come at last for those of us who still have a will, for those of us who do have a vision of beauty, of strength, and really of a world where the truly demonic possibilities of man can be unleashed once and for all.
So I imagine you take issue with the media's misconception of the drug-crazed satanic.
We represent above all other things order. Order versus chaos. Strength versus weakness. And what's happening right now is a process where the weak are falling off. There's a death wish in the human race that's expressing itself in mass murder, in all sorts of manifestations, and we encourage that. We would like to see most of the human race killed off because it is unworthy. It is unworthy of the gift of life.
Is that something that you plan to support, that killing off process, or will it be something that...
It's already begun. We're working with natural law. We're working along with natural law. And nature has now decreed that most of man must die. And as I say, we are forming an elite. This is the first step in forming really a master race. That's the only term that I can use.
Yeah, as I said before, it's
What about your music in terms of its control over people's minds? How effectively does that work?
Well, I'd like to sort of explode the myths about much of so-called satanic music. For one thing, backward masking, which frightens so many Christian evangelists, really that isn't an effective means of mind control. We have utilized the dominant frequency, which we referred to before, which is a certain vibration that when it is responded to in the human mind can unleash these possibilities. And that's what we're interested in. We don't really care if people understand our message. We're not proselytizing, we're not preaching, we're not trying to gather anyone into our fold. These middle-class housewives that are worried that we want to abduct their children are barking up the wrong tree because we wouldn't want anything to do with their whole mediocre and corrupt lifestyle. We're building a new world.
Yeah, our music has order. The music of today, in most parts, is chaos and noise. And structure and order have always been a part of great music, and that same structure and order go throughout the universe. So the music becomes at one with the universe.
We are part of the natural order, as are all of the people you've spoken to tonight. We are reflecting what is beautiful in nature. And of course the irony of that is that most ignorant human beings will mistake that as evil. They are frightened of their own possibilities. They're frightened of freedom. And their whole life is lived in fear. And that's why we will be their worst fear, their worst terror, their worst nightmare.
Tell me about the record that you'll be doing with Anton LaVey.
Well, Boyd Rice of Non and myself will be collaborating with Anton LaVey on a recording project where he will be performing various invocations, the Elektrosche Vorspiel from the Satanic Rituals, a piece from H.P. Lovecraft entitled Psychopompos, and of course H.P. Lovecraft is one of the minds who influenced us most. His understanding of the darker regions of life has been a great inspiration to us. But this will be the first recording that Anton LaVey has done in 20 years since the Satanic Mass, and it's sort of a symbolic recognition that there is now a renaissance of satanic thought. What has been bubbling underground like a volcano for these past 20 years is now bursting forth, and the effect on the world is going to be overwhelming, really.
How long personally have you had, let's say, a satanic consciousness?
Ever since I was born, and perhaps before that. Which, you'd have to define what a satanic consciousness is. I do not worship an anthropomorphic deity named Satan. I don't worship some sort of character in the infernal regions with horns on his head and a tail. It's much more mysterious than that. We worship ourselves. We are the only gods in the universe. We create our own reality. And that force in nature has been misunderstood as evil. But there is no good and evil, and intelligent people understand that. And we're only interested in gathering intelligent people together for the conquest and betterment of a new world.
Explain some of these symbols around us here.
Well, this is Baphomet, who is one of the traditional representations of the satanic entity. Above on this black and white circle is the symbol of the Church of Satan, and I think some people may be familiar with the swastika, which is the symbol of the Black Order in Germany, which was pretty much brought into use by the Thule Society, Guido von List, and the Armenian, who were very much inspirations to our work. And I think it's important to recognize National Socialism as one of the few times in the 20th century that humanity's full potential has been unleashed. The predatory instinct, the beast in man, was fully unleashed in that period. And I think since 1945, we've seen the decline of ethics, of values, of knightliness, of order in the world, and that will continue until now, because it's going to change. Because there's too many people of like mind, kindred spirits to ourselves, who are prepared to wage war on corruption and weakness and decadence.
How do you respond to the attacks from other organizations and what have you towards yours? Is that something that concerns you?
I react to it with contempt and amusement in equal measure. I don't really care what other people think of our work, because we
hold them in such low esteem it could never be something we would give thought.
We have no concern for the masses, and as I said, that's why these people are so misguided in their fears that we want to have anything to do with them. A perfect world to us would not include most of these people that are so frightened of us. And perhaps our philosophy ultimately will lead to their removal, but in a way that they'll never understand. What's going to hit them is going to hit them so hard that they'll never know what hit them.
Aside from your music, what other means are you using to communicate to?
Well, Radio Werewolf is really a communications empire. Radio Werewolf was the name of the last broadcasting station in the Third Reich, and in that sense we are returning to that spirit, and we're broadcasting the way of the wolf to the entire world, through film, through literature, through music, through every medium.
Tell me about the literature.
Well, I've recently published the Manson File, which is probably the first objective portrait of Charles Manson, who's one of the more important thinkers of the 20th century and has previously been dismissed as a madman or a psychopath. And this is the beginning of a huge revisionist project that will continue until we reclaim history as our own and take it out of the hands of the slaves and the weak.
Okay,
might be interesting to mention that Manson brought us together.
Yeah,
Manson introduced.
that is what.
Paraphrase that, Sylvia.
Okay. The Abraxas Foundation, which Boyd Rice and myself pretty much founded, was brought about by a series of coincidences and events that have been to us a proof of our destiny. We were both corresponding with Charles Manson, and basically it was Manson who introduced us. So our work certainly continues his legacy to a degree. Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to be also releasing on Feral House a book entitled The Demonic Revolution, which will be the first book to fully summarize from a satanic point of view what's going on in the world today, what this unleashing of demonic activity is really all about. The return to order, the return to authoritarianism, the return to traditional aesthetics, returning to the old world, the ancient world, the primeval world. And it's much needed, because most of what you people in the media have portrayed has been lies, frankly. It's been lies. And you exploit the fear of human beings to make profits, which is a natural instinct. But it's time to tell the truth about all these things, and of course the truth frightens people.
How do you see the world changing, let's say, in the next 20 years from your perspective?
It's going to be moving so fast that, as I said, the average human being is not going to be able to comprehend what's going on around them. We're seizing control of the media. We have scientists working for us. We have people in every field, intelligent, competent, ambitious people who have no guilt, who have no shame, and who have removed the filthiness of the Judeo-Christian ethic from their entire lifestyle. And when that happens, the power that is released from that, it's going to change the world.
Can you give us a little voiceover for the ceremony we saw this evening, what that represents?
Certainly.
What it meant to you?
Okay. 8888, an evening of apocalyptic delights, was very deliberately designed as a ceremony and a ritual to celebrate the death of the 60s, for one thing. The Sharon Tate murder was a symbolic representation of the end of an entire way of thought, of compassion for the weak, peace for its own sake, pacifism that breeds stagnation. That entire way of thinking was finally destroyed on August 8th and 9th, 1969. And that is why we chose this evening to perform a ritual of cleansing and of purification. And it also is symbolic of the unholy alliance of various satanic entities in the world. Radio Werewolf, Non, the Church of Satan, and the work that Adam Parfrey has been doing. All of these things are coming together into what I've termed the demonic revolution. And it's going to continue in ways that will surprise people, because what the mediocre mind perceives as Satanism has very little to do with Satanism. Heavy metal music, drug abuse, sacrifice of children and animals, all of this is a smokescreen that the media has created, abusing people's Christian processed fears. And Satanism, occultism, paganism, all of this is going to bring the 21st century into a truly demonic way of life.
What is a demonic way of life?
Well, the daemon, as it was defined by Plato, was the true part of man, the real part of man, the authentic part of man. It isn't the Christian bugaboo. It isn't something that lives in hell. It's right here with us right now. It's energy, it's fire, it's the spirit that makes life worth living. And most people today don't have it. They absolutely don't have it. We see people who are adventurous, and to most people, adventure is considered evil. Anything that is not given to them, anything that's not part of their assembly line lifestyle is considered evil. So in that sense, perhaps we do represent evil.
Is there an absence of guilt, though?
Absolutely. Guilt is part of the Judeo-Christian value system, and we reject it completely. And the fact is, we cannot teach others to reject the Judeo-Christian system. People are born this way. It's part of genetics. It's part of our destiny. There's a certain small elite, a different breed of human being that has really little to do with humanity as a whole. And this sort of thing has been misunderstood through the centuries as vampirism, lycanthropy. All these traditions are really real recognitions of the potential of mankind. It's the next step in evolution, and that's what we're bringing about.
Okay. Great.
Will Ronnie's be?
Yeah. Again, describe the apocalypse from your perspective.
Well, the apocalypse, of course, is a Christian term. It derives from the Bible. So really, I have to say, semantically, the apocalypse means nothing to me. The world already ended, but we are now undergoing the final death of a certain way of life. The human life wave is being destroyed. It's destroying itself. It's destroying the earth that it lives on, and people are living in a trance. They're somnambulists. They literally are brainwashed, and I don't mean to use the word in a cliched phrase. They cannot think for themselves any longer. The television thinks for them. The television is thinking for them right now. They can't break away from that conditioning, and they never will. And they're going to destroy themselves. And we celebrate that destruction. We revel in that destruction, because at last it means that the world is going to be the way we want it to be. We are recreating reality, and we're recreating it in our own image. So we're very joyful at the prospect of what you would term the apocalypse. If Armageddon is coming, then we welcome it with open arms. A bloodbath would be a cleansing and a purification of a planet that has been dirtied and degraded for too long.
Not that you would probably speculate on why they say this, but why do you think that the fundamentalists, so to speak, are ranting and raving about the apocalypse?
Because I think any wounded creature that's in its last gasps rants and raves. I mean, a wild dog that you'll eventually have to shoot rants and raves and foams at the mouth. And that's basically what these evangelists are. Christianity isn't even worth discussing. It's a dead issue. It's beating the deadest of horses. Christianity is not a vital or living force in the world anymore. And this next millennium is really going to be a satanic millennium, if you prefer to use that terminology. But to move to a higher form of understanding, it needs no terminology at all, because those who are a part of it understand it in their blood. And the blood is where real understanding comes from. It isn't an intellectual process. In fact, the intellect is a crippling thing. And we don't represent the intellect or dry academia. We represent vital existence, and that is the predatory existence. And that's what, again, is considered evil. That's what's condemned as villainous or devilish. And we are very proud of the villains in human history, because almost universally everyone that's been considered a villain is a hero, is someone who has broken away from the mold of mediocrity and with a vision of a new world created the steps towards the new world that is finally dawning. It is a new order that we are bringing about. And we could go centuries back and find those people from the Paleozoic age to today, and it's always been a very small percentage. It's never been many. But these are the people who really create reality.
Can you name some of the greats that have persuaded this order in some way?
I think Friedrich Nietzsche is one of the great thinkers of our time. Charles Manson, certainly. Adolf Hitler. The list goes on and on. And also, I wouldn't want to encourage the worship of these heroes, because true Satanists, true workers of an occult path, need not to worship anyone. A true leader doesn't need anything except himself. So we don't look back to history and revere it. It isn't a nostalgic movement.
Very good. I appreciate the interview.
Thank you, gentlemen. A very unusual household.
Yes, definitely. Are you testing for sound?
Yes.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, Zena, tell us your name and whose daughter you are.
My name is Zena LaVey, and I am Anton LaVey's daughter, who is the founder and high priest of the Church of Satan, the First Church of Satan.
Was there any doubt in your life that you'd be anything other than a Satanist yourself?
Well, at one point, I tried to live what I consider to be a normal life for a period of about 3 years. And I moved to another town where no one knew who I was, and I gave it a shot, and I was literally miserable. I was almost suicidal because of the mainstream mentality that ran through this town. Was just more torture than I could ever imagine.
What factors made you decide to try to get out and change your life?
Well, you figure, you can try everything or try anything once. And so it was just morbid curiosity, I guess.
Was your father very upset with you when you did that?
No, not at all. That's one area where we differ in our child rearing. We realize that children are going to experiment in different philosophies, lifestyles, what have you, and we feel that it's important to allow that natural process rather than trying to stifle it. So where some parents may be terrified of their kids becoming involved in drugs or what have you, maybe if they sort of loosened the reins and said, okay, we know that you're going to be doing this, but like with my parents, they said, if you're going to experiment with drugs, please do it under our roof, so that if anything happens, we can help you. Subsequently, there was very little drug experimentation. Likewise, I had a child when I was 14 that I was allowed to keep and raise on my own. And I seriously don't know how many other parents would allow a 13-year-old, a pregnant 13-year-old, to make the decision to keep her child and raise it, rather than having an abortion or giving up for adoption.
Your child is how old now?
Right now he's 10.
And he still lives with you?
Yes.
And you live where? Do you live with your dad? Or
No, I live in Los Angeles, and my son and myself live on our own.
What was it like as a child with your father? Back to school nights, that sort of thing. Just growing up.
Back to school nights. Well, growing up in the type of environment that I was in was quite a bit different from the average environment. I was exposed to a wide variety of personalities, a wide variety of classes, everything from very street mentality to duchesses.
Did the other kids pick on you at school?
Definitely.
Your father was?
Definitely, yes. So that was one thing that was rather eye-opening to me, the fact that if you're considered the slightest bit out of the norm or different, it wasn't only me, it was any other child that was considered different, was picked on ruthlessly. And at a very early age, I realized that there had to be a stop to that type of thing.
Are all your friends now in the same church as you? Or do you have friends outside?
I can say that all of my closest friends are of the Satanic philosophy, yes.
Describe in your words what the Satanic philosophy is.
Well, Satanic philosophy, it's an alternative not only to the...
We're talking about what does Satan mean to you?
It represents an alternative. Satanism represents an alternative not only to the fundamental religions, but an alternative to mass thought, what we term herd mentality, the masses that'll just go with something because the person that's next to them happens to be doing the same thing, and it's safe and it's secure. We find our security in other things, and whether it's simply listening to a different type of music, or whether it's appreciating a different art form, we find our own standards, if you will, and our own morals, and we live by those morals religiously, and they're what we consider to be just and true for us.
You sound like you were brought up in a very loving home. Did you feel that way?
Yes, I feel I was raised in a very caring environment where I was concerned. Yes, I can say I was. Children, that's a popular misconception too, is that children are sacrificed at the altar, that animals are used for sacrifices. And it's a horrible, horrible misconception. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I mean, I can honestly say that probably my best friends are my pets. Why would I want to kill them? It's absolutely beyond me how people can think we would do that.
Is it a misconception that sex and pain go relatively hand in hand?
Well, sex and pain, everyone has their own sexual preferences, and that's up to the individual. I mean, we advocate free sex in the sense that you're free to partake in whatever sexual activity is most pleasurable to you, so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else that isn't of the same thinking. Even if that means masturbation completely, if that's what's most pleasurable to you, then so be it. But that's completely left up to the individual.
What about the public conception of satanic orgies? Is that all total bullshit?
Well, from my experiences, it's bullshit. I mean, I'm sure there are orgies.
If they have them in the White House, they might as well.
I've never witnessed any orgies.
Paul,
No, I'm
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.